Hey guys, I'm Nate. I'm here with Pastor Joe, and we just finished a conversation about the good kind of weird. So, Joe, I was thinking 1 Corinthians 13 is a passage in Scripture that often comes up when we're talking about love, especially, right, marriages and weddings. And so, but that wasn't part of your conversation tonight. I know probably one of those things that you have more to share about or more thoughts on that passage and maybe how it connects to this conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking about really diving into it almost on purpose because it is often like this wedding passage where, you're like, oh, husband and wife, and you're going to be patient, you're going to be kind, and you're not going to boast. But it's like often for whatever reason not brought up in the conversation of like hard love. Like, we talked about loving your enemies in this message. And, we started thinking about like love is patient with your enemy. Love is kind to your enemy.
For how long?
Yeah, right. Like we start like trying to qualify it. Like, well, God, I can be patient today. And how do we do that? But like, if we start looking through that passage, love is patient, love is kind, love does not boast, it doesn't envy, it doesn't hold a record of wrongs. Like love always hopes, love perseveres. Like, if we start walking through a list of people that we feel like are hard to love, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a boss, maybe it's someone really close. Like maybe you're having a hard time right now with your spouse or like with a kid or something like that. Like start making that list and then start asking God, like, how can I be kind to this person? Like, what is it that I'm impatient with that like God can maybe like insert his viewpoint and like show me what they're going through so that I can have the patience that maybe you have with them, all the things that I feel like I'm holding on to and I'm holding on to that grudge, like God help me forgive that person and not hold on to those grudges. Like, so it can be kind of a neat roadmap that if we start walking through that passage, 1 Corinthians 13, like verse, I think 4 through 9 or something like that, like walk through that passage as a prayer list. Like, how can I be this? How can I be that? And I think God will start to stir something else and show us the kind of love that he has for us too.
Yeah, because when I start thinking about loving your enemies, I'm like, okay, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And it's like almost that perspective, that mindset, I think to kind of calibrate that around 1 Corinthians 13 is really helpful.
Yeah,
right? All of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe this week I can find a little bit of strength to be patient.
Yeah.
And it's not just something I'm trying to come up with, but the Lord's giving that to me, or, just kind of going through that. I like that.
I think praying through Scripture is always a really neat habit. So if that's something you've never picked up before, it can be one of the more powerful ways to open up the Bible and to start walking with God is like, God, show me this piece, and phrase by phrase or line by line, letting God kind of speak to you that way. It's fun.
Yeah, I think kind of building on that, I love to hear you speak to, I think about there's loving your enemies, and then there's people that are almost like, I prefer not to go out of my way to try to.
Like inconvenient.
But there's probably something I can do that would change maybe the trajectory of how my interaction with that person is, or I don't know, become just something small that I could do to maybe, instead of just going out of my way a little bit, may kind of change how our relationship or how we connect, kind of alter that a little bit. So I love to hear you speak that a little bit, where it may not be someone that's just a complete jerk and they're mean to me every day, but it's someone that's just outside my normal path of life. Yeah. So it's going to require that I kind of be a little bit more intentional maybe about going their direction.
I've found these people in my life to be the ones that I feel like I have nothing in common with. I love football, for instance, and like, well, they're like, what's a football? I'm like, oh man, like, how do I even have a conversation with that person? It can feel like sometimes, right? And maybe football is a bad example, but there are those people in our life. It's like, man, they're our cousin, they're our neighbor, they're our coworker. And we're like, man, we try to find that thing in common and we're just like, can't find it. So peace out. And I think subconsciously, they don't become our enemy, but it's like we stop trying to figure out how to love them because it's inconvenient. I don't have the time to figure them out. I don't have the time. But ironically, it's that exact reality that makes those loving actions all the more meaningful because that person realizes it too.
Absolutely.
Like that person realizes you don't have much in common. That person realizes that you never actually cross paths. It might be an elderly neighbor and a young family, and you're like, they're like, yo, they're busy or whatever, but then you show up with a plate of cookies or a birthday cake or whatever, it means the world to them because you took the time to learn who they are, to learn something about them, and take them over. Now, hopefully they're not allergic to the nuts and the cookies or something like that, but, like, go figure out a nuance about someone and then use that to love them. I've always loved that concept of the 5 love languages, and oftentimes similar to 1 Corinthians 13, that's like often in the circle of like marriage or dating, but like your cousin, your parents, your neighbor, your coworkers, they have a love language. They're going to respond to words. They're going to respond to acts of service. They're going to respond to physical touch. Maybe they just need a hug. Maybe they just need someone to pat them on the back when they do a good job. If you can start paying attention and learning those things, that stuff starts to speak volumes too. And again, that's what starts building the uncanny, the good kind of weird relationship, because like they're thinking to themselves, I have no idea why this person would prioritize me.
Right.
But they are.
They are. And I think about this couple I've talked to recently at Grace, and they're at Grace now because one of their friends was loved on like incredibly radically by someone from their church. And so they kind of came to they were like, wow, our friends are being loved by this group of people, and it's weird. Like, we've never seen anything like this. And so
that's awesome.
They literally kind of set them down this trajectory of like, we want to have what they have. We want, like, I don't think people in our life would do what that group of people is doing in their life. And so really cool that through that process, they found Grace by kind of checking out the website and said, is there a church near us? And kind of hearing their story, getting to know them. And it's just like that group of people who loved them in a good, weird way. Right. Showed up in their friends hearing that story, and it's changing their life. You know?
What's inspiring about that to me is like, we assume that when we're loving someone that's the person that's going to impact. And we have no idea how God and his spirit is going to use that to ripple affect people we've never even met before.
That's really cool.
They hear the story or they see from afar what's going on. And they're like, man, I want some of that.
Yeah, and that group of people that has no idea that a state over or 2 states over set this other couple, in their path towards rediscovering Christ for the first time. So
this,
that's cool.
I feel like if this stuff has been challenging it's been challenging to me. I've been writing a ton of stuff down I need to really start praying about. But if it's been challenging you at all, like, just slow down for a moment. Start making a little list. Who could you love? What are some moments in your life that you could take that intentionality and start to work on someone? Because like that's like, I feel like the fruit that God can start to work with, and he can start doing something in your life maybe that you never thought possible. And I think that's why God is love. That's why that's one of his key characteristics, because that's what starts to change the hearts and minds of people. And it can be very transformative. It's awesome.
That's good. Take us right back to 1 Corinthians 13.
That's right.
And spend some time there. Thanks, Joe. Thank you guys for hanging out with us at our weekend extras. And we look forward to having more conversation with you kind of coming up next week.